Hey! I'm Cole, and I am a thanatologist. And I'm not just any type of thanatologist, I'm double certified. And I would bet that not a single one of you knows what this word means. So, thanatology is the study of death and dying and grief and bereavement and loss. And despite this, I pinky promise you that I am actually very fun at parties. Very fun, I can assure you. Okay, I'm going to tell you about one of the worst experiences of my life. So picture this. I'm 22 years old. I just got married. And I was expecting, wedded bliss. I'm going to get to have this whole first year of marriage. I'm going to be newlywed. I'm going to be able to say things like, my husband and I did this weekend. It was just going to be great. So 21 days after I got married, I was 20 pounds heavier. I had also, in that 21-day period, lost about 30 to 40% of the hair on the top of my head, which is ironic because now, 12, 13 years later, I willingly shave most of my hair off of my head. Also in that 21-day period, the skin in my armpits and the crease of my legs got dark and thickened. And because that wasn't enough, for the first month of marriage, I was also dealing with insane and near constant hot flashes. I was hot all the time. I could not get a break. It was terrible. So obviously, my body went off the rails, right? And it was very unexpected. So obviously, I went to the doctor. I had all kinds of tests, all kinds of scans, and we got to a point where it was the day where I was waiting to get a phone call with results, with conclusive results. The phone rings. It's my doctor's office. Hello? Cole, we're so sorry. You're infertile. It's conclusive. And I will never forget being 22 years old, newly married, and the feel of the bathroom tiles under my feet, like how cool they were, just all those little details in that moment when I got that news. I knew that when my husband got home from work that day, I would tell him and we would talk about it. But until then, who do you call when you're really upset? You call your mommy, at whatever age you are. So I needed to call my mom. But this was the day, the time when you had flip phones and did not have iPhones. So I got my flip phone, flipped that sucker open, and I extended the antenna fully because this was going to be an important phone call. Dialed. And at this time, you had to press a separate button to make the call connect. So, And at this point, I'm calling my mom, and I start crying. Mom answers. I'm like, Mom, I'm infertile. And my mom goes, so you're not going to give me any grandkids? So what happened there? I call this a shadow loss. A shadow loss is a loss in life, not of life. A shadow loss is any time a thing that we love dies. So that could be, here's some examples of shadow losses. Divorce. Your best friend ghosts you. You unexpectedly get fired. Maybe you get diagnosed with a medical condition that you're going to have the rest of your life. Those are shadow losses. Big deaths are what I call any time a human or an animal that we love dies. And here's the kicker. Our brains grieve shadow losses the exact same way that we grieve big deaths. It doesn't know how to differentiate. But the problem is, we don't have a word, until now, shadow loss, to be able to describe this experience. Now, the other thing about shadow loss is, let's say that I go through a divorce and my best friend goes through a divorce. Her divorce might have been totally fine, very amicable, not a shadow loss for her because she wasn't grieving anything. But let's say my divorce was devastating and came out of nowhere and I was a mess for years. The difference there is that I would say, yes, I had a divorce, but that was a shadow loss for me. And that tells you, oh, that was a shadow loss for Cole. Another way to kind of test whether or not you've had a shadow loss is if you have ever found yourself maybe confiding to a friend, saying something like, man, this would almost be easier if someone had actually died. Because when someone dies, everybody knows how serious it is, right? It's really hard to communicate to people how devastating something is when you kind of don't have a dead body to show for it or no funeral to invite people to. This is shadow loss. Now, when I found out that I was infertile, the infertility wasn't like the cause of it. The actual cause of what I had was called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which affects about 1 in 10 women worldwide. Isn't that nuts? Now, for me, and what research shows, when people are dealing with a lot of medical symptoms and you don't yet know what it is, people have higher levels of depression and anxiety. But once you find out the name of what you're dealing with, research shows that depression, anxiety, stress drops just by knowing a name, just by knowing the name. And that happened for me too. Once I found out it was PCOS, I had something to work with. And I immediately found an online forum of women who also had PCOS, and I was able to find people who actually could understand all the aspects and complexities of this shadow loss instantaneously, just by sharing this name, bonding under this name. There are 3 things that are gifts of shadow loss. 3 things that we can all kind of look forward to once we kind of get out of the woods in that initial moment of the loss. And they are resilience, empathy, and presence. And the reason I have the first letters underlined there is because it's REP, which spells rep. When you're in the gym lifting weights, what do you do to build muscle? You have to do repetitions. You have to repeat the same motion over and over in order to get stronger. So too with these 3 skills. These are learned skills. You have to use them in order to grow them. How do you get them? You get these skills developed anytime you go through a trauma, a loss, a failure, basically bad stuff, difficult moments. That's how you get here. Resilience is the ability to get back up after you fall down. Empathy works like this. Sympathy is an at-you thing, whereas empathy is a with-you thing. And presence, remember when I told you when I got the call that I was infertile, and I can still, feel the cold tile under my feet? In that moment, I was fully present. I was not hanging out in the past, thinking of something that happened yesterday. There wasn't a bone in my body that was worried about the future. I was totally and completely in the here and now. And research shows that people who score higher in these 3 skills, resilience, empathy, and presence, they have higher day-to-day levels of happiness and well-being. They are healthier, and they live longer, which is amazing, because in order to get these skills, that means those people have had to deal with difficulty. So it's kind of the silver lining, so to speak. Now, back to my infertility story. Let me tell you about my mom. So, at the time that I got married, my mom, guess what her world might have been like? Her oldest daughter just got married. What does that probably mean? It probably means that one day my mom was probably going to get a phone call that went something like this. Mom, guess what? You're going to be a grandma. And instead, I called her and basically told her, Mom, you're not going to be a grandma. My mom just had a newlywed daughter. Like all of her friends was expecting one day grandkids are going to show up. She was preparing for retirement in a few years, definitely thinking through, I wonder if I'll take the baby 1 day a week or 2 days a week. And here I am on the phone calling and telling her that, hey, the future you saw for yourself probably isn't going to look like that. When my mom responded to me and was like, you're not going to give me grandkids, that was not her being cruel or mean or anything. That was my mom reckoning with that shadow loss. And that's the thing about shadow loss. My infertility, or your divorce, or your best friend ghosting you, we often tell ourselves these stories that like, oh, this is just affecting me and my world, and it's just me, and I have to go through this. But the reality is that other people in your life, they're going to be experiencing aspects of your shadow loss too. So that infertility was a shadow loss for me. It changed what my future as an adult was probably going to look like. So too for my mom. So too for my dad and my husband. Shadow losses are, generally speaking, not things that happen to just one person. And there's a fourth gift of shadow loss, and that's the gift of community. Just like when I found out that what I had was PCOS, and I found this entire community of other people that also had it, we bonded and connected over that shared loss, right? And I have something in common with all of you here today. Every single person here has had some kind of shadow loss. Might have been a divorce. You might have been ghosted. You might have not gotten accepted to the college program of your life, like of your dreams. It doesn't matter what the specific event was. What connects us is that we have the shadow loss. And each of you have that in common with each other. And the reason that I've chosen to share my story with you today is because shadow losses have an incredible power to bring us together, to create permanent, lasting bonds with each other in a way that a great birthday party doesn't. You know, the things that are memorable that knit us together are not perfect days. It's the hard days. It's the tough stuff. So, this is shadow loss, and these are the gifts that it can bring into your life.